Welcome to the Behavior Code Podcast. Historically, you might be watching, if you're catching up on all the episodes on iTunes or YouTube, I'm historically interviewing graduates and alumni of the Messengers and Tabiat program. This episode, I'll just be talking myself. We'll keep it really brief and go back through the premise of the Behavior Code. Originally, I was going to call it Messengers. It's kind of like a self-titled album or something. It's just based off of the messengers, but messengers wouldn't be the most clickbait, like you would click and find the messengers. Like you wouldn't be searching for the messengers. Behavior code, I think, has a cool ring to it. And, there's a code of behavior. And specifically, we're talking about genetic behavior. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was how language has trapped or caged your natural behavior it's intertwined it into a bunch of concepts about your conduct and your ethics and, how to think about what you're doing, and especially using negative emotions. That's how a lot of, this needs to be plugged in. We help plug this in somehow. It's going to die. Maybe over there is better. Yeah. Hold on a second. Perfect. Good teamwork. Wait, here comes the power. There it is. Power just came. Language has been used to control the masses. There was a long time that it was called the Dark Ages, and language wasn't really there. And it was spoken language, but where's the written language? And yeah, there's a lot else happening in the world. The Dark Ages happened in just Europe, but English is the language of science currently. It may change soon or may not. But currently, there's very few American schools learning Chinese, even present time. But a lot of Chinese schools learn English. English is the language that's unified the world. And English went through the Dark Ages, where for 1,000 years, most people didn't read or speak Old English, Middle English, New English. And it's barely even that old. Up until then, it was just like Latin or Celtic things or whatever. Or, other things in Europe, Germanic. So it was designed by a few people who held the pen, and when they created new words or concepts or were poetic with phrases, or especially when they codified the sounds in the 600s AD, they codified the sounds of the English language into symbols that looks really like fairy writing. It looks like something from a J.R. Tolkien book about like elves. Like that's how it looks. It's very old English. It's like all swift, like wispy, and there's certain symbols in there you wouldn't recognize, and they don't sound like they look. So it was represented by a kind of encrypted code. And then there's Middle English, where it evolved and changed because the human being of the region actually discovered new vowels in their mouth and how to use and manipulate their tongue and use their palate. They actually discovered a different placement of they incorporated new sounds, almost like how a beatboxing person would get a new sound and incorporate it into their song. So new sounds became available, and then the language changed. And then, modern English. Somebody was codifying. It came from just a spoken language, and then it was codified into a written language to represent the sounds. And there's a encryptedness to it because there's something called a phonetic alphabet. If you look up a phonetic alphabet, it has all the sounds. It's an alphabet of symbols that represent the sounds you make, not necessarily a language itself. It's its own language that represents sounds. There's many sounds that are in Spanish, not in English, that are in English, not in German, that are not in Swahili. There's clicks. There's languages of clicks. Those are on the phonetics alphabet. There's 1,600 sounds or so. And English was not written phonetically. It was written in other symbols that represent sounds. A lot of those words are what you call, monophones or homophones. They're homophones. So they sound the same, but they're spelled differently. And they mean differently. So it's a homophone, one sound. And I don't want to necessarily give away. What would be a fun one to give? What's a fair one to give away here? This is word magic I'm talking about. And this is how your behavior, your natural behavior, to self-organize into groups and hierarchies and mate according to your status and so many other things. You know, what would be one of these words that I want to give away? So many come to mind. Well, see, there are some words like the word government that you could break apart and say, this is mente governare, which is mind governments, or to lead. Government means to lead mind. But that's just the etymology of the word. That's not a homophone. A homophone word, I mean, you know, like words like there, and there, but like one that has influenced your behavior. Well, let's say birthday. I'll give this one away. Birthday. Birthday originally was spelled B-E-R-T-H. That a berth was when a ship docked at shore, and all of the commodities on the ship were given a birth certificate when they at the birth of the ship. They were given a certificate of ownership by the land, from the ocean to the land. So now we celebrate birthdays, but when you're born, your parents have to sign a birth certificate from you being born from your watery mother's womb out into the land, dry land. A birth certificate you must sign, and the government, you know, then makes you into a dead corporation and takes loans out against your name. So literally, there was a day and age when birth certificate was not a thing. That's been instituted by the government throughout time, and it represents the ownership of you after you were delivered through your mother's hips, which is very similar to a ship. Birthday. Birthday keeps you trapped as a commodity. So that's what I'll say about that. You know, I started to look at this thing when I invented something called sound code. And I was going through the sounds of the English alphabet, and I realized that the word X was really 3 sounds because it had the word X, X. So I was like, I would spell that EKS, which is like its own word. Like the letter X is actually a word. And I started to think of letters are words. They're just old original words that are now symbolized by a single symbol that we now call letters, and we put them together as bigger words. But those are just words too. And I saw that all of the letters, none of them were a single sound except the letter E. It's one sound, an E, but even the letter A is A. And you can make the sound though, like in Spanish, ah. But that's in Spanish, ah is the only letter that has a single sound. E in Spanish is pronounced A, which is 2 sounds. So that's the only like primal root sound that's also a letter in English would be the letter E. All the others are actually words. A is a word. X is a word. W is a word. U is a word. And I started to see this when I read a book called The Secret Universe of Names. And it was talking about the sounds of your name you have been coded to respond to. So and that's where I came up with the idea of a sound code. There's a code of sounds that you respond to. That when someone says, hey, Chris, and I turn, that those sounds, if they had said, hey, Christian, is very similar. Or if they had said anything else, Jason, like I wouldn't have turned. So your nervous system has been coded by these sounds. And that's how adults controlled you growing up when they could stop coercing you. They used words that had threats behind them. So you would experience the pain or suffering or the fear. And that came accompanied with a bunch of sentences that you accepted in that moment because you allowed it to influence your decisions. Because you were a kid, of course you did. And those sentences become what we say to ourselves, how we think about ourselves, and especially as we go for our goals, try to push through to the next level, whatever that is for us, that we stop ourselves because really we're saying something to ourselves that was said to us when we were younger, that, you know, evoked a strong, heavy emotion. So it opened us up, and the sentence deeply went in. Language is it's the lock, it's the cage, but it's also the key. The knife can defend you or it can cut you. And you can be pushing yourself lower and lower or keeping yourself exactly where you are, even though you're desiring something more with your language. You can also be elevating yourself with your language. You just need other people to hear it, because just talking at the wall isn't going to do much. That's why there needs to be audience members or live audience members or viewers, people that listen to this afterwards. Wherever you are listening to this, you are harmonizing with the words, the concepts, and putting your attention on new things, that the words that you use represent your mind, that they are the result of what you have heard in the past, that they all have feelings associated with it, and you are expressing a feeling through your words. And that feeling can be accessed through the words and changed through the words. And the feeling, you're getting more of that feeling. I mean, that's getting into like law of attraction, that the chronic or predominant mental attitude that you carry as you move forward through life is organizing material around you, organizing cooperation and allies and enemies with people. And over time, your predominant mental attitude becomes your experience of life. But that's from the silent flute. So if you want more information on that, that's silent flute level knowledge. Go to ninthlimb.com. That's where I do my online mindset training, yoga, breathing, and meditation. And that's the number 9. You know where the link is down below, ninthlimb.com. If you like this episode on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you see it later, leave a review. That's always nice. And I'll see you in the next episode every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Namaste.